First story. I, 29M, got cheated on by my ex-girlfriend, 28F, a week before our engagement, and this is me sharing the plain truth about my life. In February this year, a week before our engagement, my ex-girlfriend announced that she was going on a week-long vacation to Turkey. I was swamped with work at the time and initially refused to let her go by herself, but after much convincing, I finally agreed. The day before her trip, I met her at the airport and waited with her until her plane took off. From that moment, things never went back to normal. On her first night there, I got a call late at night. She told me she had checked into her hotel, but the call came almost 2 hours after her arrival. She said she was tired and had a 4-hour trip planned the next day, so she needed to sleep. The next day, I didn't receive any messages or phone calls from her. I texted and called repeatedly with no response. What was triggering for me was that she was seen online from time to time but wouldn't respond. When she finally called at midnight, we had a huge fight, and she promised to pick up every time I called. The next day, during my lunch break, I called her and heard weird sounds and late responses. It sounded like she was giving someone a blowjob. She said she was busy and hung up. I kept calling, and she picked up 15 minutes later. This time, I heard moaning and her telling me she wasn't okay. I switched to a video call. She was surprised at first, switched to video herself for about 5 seconds, and then hung up. She picked up the video call 5 minutes later, pretending to throw up in the toilet, and said she was going out with no phone connection, then quickly hung up again. I was in a hysterical state, not knowing what had happened. I left work, called her parents and my parents, and told them everything was off. I blocked her on all social media. When she returned to Tunisia, she tried to convince everyone that I was hallucinating and that she had done nothing wrong, but I know what I heard. Now, I really don't know what to do. Second story. I have been with my partner for 5.5 years, living together for 5 years. I have cheated multiple times, having sexual relations with 2 people and kissing people I shouldn't be kissing. I thought I was doing better recently until Friday night. It happened again. I went to the club with my partner. When I went to the bathroom, this guy passed me and grabbed my arm. At first, I was surprised, so I ignored it. The next time I went to the bathroom, he did the same thing again. This time, I actually looked at him and gave him attention. We went to go talk outside. I felt this magnetic pull towards him immediately. It was a feeling I haven't felt in a long time. As we were talking, I felt the longing to kiss him. I was drunk and I just went for it. Holy crap! The sexual attraction and chemistry were on fire. Our tongues met and moved perfectly together. He grabbed the back of my head, and I melted. We made out a couple more times before we went inside to dance. We danced together in the crowd, with me grinding my ass on his dick. I felt him grow hard. I reached behind and softly stroked his dick. He tried to reach his hands in my pants, but I stopped him. Not here. I had to go back to my partner, so I left him. I can't stop thinking about the feeling that stranger gave me. He lit me up. Our chemistry was insane. It makes me wet just thinking about it. This made me realize that I can't ignore this part of me anymore. I know I should leave, but I can't imagine actually doing it. Third story. I suspected that my wife was lying to me about going out with her friend 3 weeks ago. There were too many red flags. I did my very best to give her a chance and come clean. She refused to say anything except that I was losing my mind. I've always trusted her no matter what, but this time felt different. I decided to put a tracker on her, and saw the day I went to work that she had left work early. I called her and she told me that she was going to hang out with her friend. I watched her GPS go to a park about 15 minutes from my work. I went to see what was up and found her in the car with another guy. I opened his door and told him to get the F out of the car and away from my wife. He got out, got into his car and left. I got really upset and asked my wife WTF she was doing. She said that she was just talking. I left, opened my own bank account and credit card as ours was joint, and am not going to pay for her outings. Now I don't know what to do. We have an 8-year-old child together and us splitting up is going to destroy her. I love my wife, but also hate her right now. I don't know what to do. I don't even know why I'm writing this, probably just need to get this off of my chest. IDK. Is divorce the only option now? Fourth story. I had been having weird dreams for the past few months that my fiancé had been cheating on me. Then last night I went through his phone and had saw an email saying your OnlyFans subscription is about to expire. So I tried to log into it and couldn't guess the password. At this point, I've seen too much, I have to keep digging. I changed the password so I could log in. What I saw brought me to tears. He had been messaging multiple and mean probably 7+ of the women, paying for contact that he's asking for, talking to them so sexually, things he doesn't even say to me. It broke my heart. For context, I just had our son 2 months ago. I'm very self-conscious about how my body looks now. He's calling all of these skinnier girls sexy and that he loves their body. I don't look like that. He's always said he loves my body no matter what. I got with him a few months after I had my daughter from a separate relationship over 2 years ago. We have a house together. We've been together almost 2 years now. I speak so highly of him because he's always been a gentleman, always been amazing. Me confronting him was actually our first ever argument. At first he didn't understand why I was so upset. He said it's just porn and it just got out of control on the app. I said I don't care about porn, but at this point you're getting nudes, buying them, and speaking sexually to other women when you have one at home that you committed to being with the rest of your life. This morning I finally got him to realize my side. That's cheating. Major cheating. I feel emotional and physical. I'm just so disgusted and distraught. IDK what to do, how to feel, how to move forward, if I even should move forward. So far I said our engagement is on hold. I can't marry a man I can't trust. I thought he was different, but he's just like every other guy I've dated. And the fact that I let him in my daughter's life. I asked him if he would ever accept this behavior if someone did that to her, and he said no. And I wouldn't either. So why am I having doubts on what to do? I don't want to start over. I love him, but I can't even look at him right now. This has brought my confidence to an all-time low. Fifth story. So, I was talking to this guy for about 3 months on and off. It always seemed like he wasn't fully into me until suddenly he was. He was giving me way more of his time and attention, and it was nice. Things were good between us. I thought we were both putting in effort until one day he tells me he has a family emergency he had to leave work for and drive out to Nevada, about a 4-5 drive from where we live, to help. We were supposed to hang out that night, but I didn't think anything of it. I just wished him and his family well. He tells me he'll text me later that night with more details, and he doesn't text me until 11:30 p.m. that day. He tells me that his ex had called him during work and begged him to drive to Nevada with her to pick up her family from the hospital, because they've been in a wreck. I felt weird about that, especially cause he didn't even call me or anything to let me know what was really going on. It feels like he crossed a boundary in our relationship and didn't respect me by going with his ex. A little background on them is that they were on and off again for 4 years and didn't officially break up until 2023. Or so he says. I decided to trust him and believe he didn't do anything while he was there with her, and then about 2 weeks after the car incident, we were hanging out at his house around 9 p.m. when his ex decided to come beg for him back. He didn't tell me until after he came back into his room. He was out there talking to her for about 10 to 15 minutes. He assured me that she means nothing to him and he doesn't want to be with her, only me. He tells me he found it incredibly toxic that she did that and that he was not happy with her during their whole relationship. He only started to understand what falling for someone was when he met me. We lasted 2 weeks after that. He began avoiding me, texting me less, and not being as communicative. He had an LA trip planned with his friend and he ignored me for a whole 24+ hours. I had had enough and texted him telling him we weren't going to work out and that it was over. He sent back a picture of him and his friend. Nothing else. 2 days later, he leaves a note on my car saying that he regrets what happened and that he would like to try again if it's not too late. I give him no response. After he sent that picture, I blocked him. About a month later, I see him again at work. By the way, I met this guy at the gym because I work there and he is a member. He comes in and hands me a card, and in that card he explains that his ex went on that LA trip with them. She forced herself in the car, and apparently no one wanted to say anything to her to not make a big fuss. He spent the last 2 weeks of our relationship around her, and the month after we had broken up too. He said he didn't want to at all, but she had threatened to kill herself if he ever left her. The only reason he reached out to me again was because he had finally had enough and stood up to her and her family, letting them know he wanted to be with me, and not her. He told her he didn't love her. And now he has been acting so great with me. It truly feels like he is putting 100% of himself into us, but I can't help but hold resentment towards him. I understand the difficulty of the situation, but how can I allow myself to be treated like that? I feel like allowing myself to completely giving my full emotions and time to him would be a form of not respecting myself, because of how he had allowed what we had go away because of his ex. 6th story. I'm trying to wrap my head around what is going on, but right now nothing makes sense. I feel like my reality is shattered. Last Sunday was the last time me, 31F, and him, 33M, spoke. He had just left my house. We were intimate. He told me his work schedule and that he was going to see me next week. For almost 10 years we have grown into adults, working on being better individuals and to each other, working on our traumas to trust each other. I was not always perfect, but I was always honest. I vocalized over and over and over how if he was talking to someone else, I was out of his life forever. I do not share. He always said no, always reassured me and would say that when we're together, laughing and joking and being intimate, that's what reality was. He said he was all mine. Sunday evening I get a call, and there is a girl on the other end. You can guess what our conversation entailed. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't speak. None of this made sense to me. He had been lying to me the entire time. We were long distance, and this broke my heart. I looked past the passive aggressiveness, self-loathing, and took his suicidal ideations at face value because of how dark his past was. I knew he was insecure about his face, his body. I know he hates himself. I knew he had anxiety, I knew he had depression, I knew he had ulcers from drinking so much, but I always gave him warmth and compassion. I gave him one night to explain to me, to saying anything to make me understand how he could just be at my home, in my bed, hours before this. To just absolutely obliterate everything we worked towards, everything we were. He did not answer my text. I said he was the cruelest person I've ever met in my lifetime. I waited 24 hours and gave him a final call. My voicemail was not screaming or crying, but I was harsh. He has a tendency to get sensitive if I would poke fun at him too much, if my tone was off, if I acted bothered or uninterested. He rarely ever sees me treat him like I did on that phone call. I told him that he spins a web of lies and infects everyone around him like a parasite. That he has to go to sleep at night knowing he is a coward, and that this will haunt him for the rest of his life. That I deserve closer, but he's not a man, not an adult, not a person that can make a decision to save his life. That he said he loved me. The videos, the pictures, the thousands of text messages just spin around my head. I do not understand how you can say you love someone and not only do something so malicious and cruel, but to completely ignore that person after. We promised each other we would never fight and disappear. It makes me feel like he chose her. It makes me feel like I am not good enough. It makes me feel like none of this was real. How can you not even apologize to the girl that has been in your life for almost 10 years? The silence is louder than any words he could say, and that is what hurts so badly. 7th story. I've been dating someone, 36M, I am, 27F, for about 6 months, and found out 2 days ago I was the other woman. I've been completely beside myself and depressed, running through so many emotions from embarrassment to anger to pain to heartbreak. I knew from the start that he was previously in a long-term relationship, and that she still lived at his residence, but he was able to conjure up reasoning for the arrangement that seemed plausible enough at the time. His main property was currently under renovation and uninhabitable. His story was that as soon as the house was complete, he would move into his home and sell the current property to his ex-girlfriend, possibly as a gesture of goodwill. He told me the relationship was fully over, and it truly seemed that way. We carried out an otherwise pretty normal relationship and fell in love. He met my family a few months ago and developed relationships with them. We would talk for hours on the phone, nearly every day. He would tell me how crazy about me he was, and how excited he was for a future together. I thought I finally found the love of my life. The big red flag that I couldn't get over was his unwillingness of avoidance to disclose our relationship to his ex. He made excuses that she would fly off the handle, and it could jeopardize the house sale. And he didn't want to add more complications to his life, since his mom was fighting cancer, and he was running a business blah blah blah. I reached a point where enough was enough, and I gave him an ultimatum to tell her that night, and he made another long excuse about talking to her the next week. I broke up with him. I reached out to his ex-girlfriend on Facebook and she said he cheated on her 6 years ago at the beginning of their relationship, and she should have known. She was disgusted to hear that we've been sexually active, and clearly had no idea he was leading this double life. He blocked me on everything almost immediately. It's messing with my head to not know what was true and receive no closure. Literally days ago this man was my boyfriend and we had a timeline for moving in together and even getting engaged. It sounds crazy and I feel silly, but it really seemed real. He had me and my whole family fooled. I know I'm not the only person who has been through something like this, and thought maybe sharing my experience on a forum like this would bring some solace, or helpful pieces of advice for moving forward. It's been less than 2 days since everything imploded, and I've been struggling to get out of bed. I've cried my eyes out. I don't know what's real and I'm heartbroken and shocked. 8th story. I found out yesterday that my 41M wife, 38F, of nearly 16 years has cheated on me with a married colleague from work. I think I'm still in shock as it doesn't seem to quite have set in that my marriage is likely over. Apparently it happened gradually as she says she was seduced by his flattery. I know for a fact that they visited a hotel for sex last year when she said she was meeting a friend female. She says that she felt that I didn't want her anymore and that it felt like I was her roommate. I won't deny that our sex life had slowed down significantly, but truthfully I was waiting for her to initiate sex after having been shot down so much in the months leading up to it. She advised that she just didn't feel sexy, but I tried to reassure her that I thought she was. Other physical intimacy such as cuddling, kissing and loving affirmations were still happening throughout. After Christmas, I noticed that she seemed a little distant and was spending a lot more time on her phone. At this point, I talked to her about what the problem was. She stated that she thought I didn't want to be with her anymore. I reassured her that this wasn't the case and that I loved her. It's important to note that she has had struggles with her mental health. She has been on antidepressants for a couple of years now. We had also always agreed to be child-free, and she was happy for me to have a vasectomy. But after talking to her at Christmas, she stated that her feelings had changed, and her biological clock was ticking. I suggested the possibility of counseling, as this was a red line for me. I do not want kids, ever, and I didn't want her to resent me for it in years to come. She initially agreed to this, but never followed up on it. Fast forward to this month, and although she had seemed happier, I still had a nagging suspicion that something wasn't right as she was always on her phone, taking it everywhere. I'm not proud of myself, but I went on her phone when she was asleep. Although she had deleted all of the messages from him, some messages from one of her friends who works at the same company seemed to indicate that something had been going on. The word soulmate was mentioned, which honestly felt like my heart had been ripped in two. I confronted her with this, but she denied anything physical, saying he was just a very good friend that she had grown very close to. She advised that her mental health issues had gotten worse over the last year, with heavy suicidal ideation. But she was scared to bring it up as she didn't want to get sectioned. The work colleague was apparently something of a kindred spirit she could talk to about it, as she was terrified that I would leave her or have her sectioned, that she felt that this man was her soulmate from that point of view. I explained that this was an emotional affair at the very least. She denied that as was and that there was nothing physical going on, that she had cut off contact with him anyway due to him being quote stalker. Why? Since I'm posting here, it won't surprise you to know that I've since found deleted emails regarding a meeting at a hotel prior to Christmas, as well as references to sexual acts and pictures sent, deleted but they're mentioned. I confronted her again yesterday morning and she confirmed that it had been physical on 5 occasions over 2 meetings. I've since left the house to try and get my mind in order, but she's had a mental breakdown since. I made sure she contacted the doctor and arranged to get some help for her, including counseling before I left as I was truly worried she might hurt herself. I've since received a lot of messages advising how it was a mistake that she made in her darkest time, and that she loves me, but I'm not sure if I can ever look at her in the same way again. I love her but I have no idea what on earth to do. Apologies for the wall of text, but I just needed to vent and ask whether it's even possible to save this marriage if indeed I want to.